can and should answer for whether he kept that promise while bound by it in office. His insistence otherwise is just wrong. And so is his claim that there's a slippery slope to impeaching private citizens if you proceed. The trial of a former official for abuses he committed as an official, arising from an impeachment that occurred while he was an official, poses absolutely no risk whatsoever of subjecting a private citizen to impeachment for their private conduct. To emphasize the point, President Trump was impeached while he was in office for conduct in office, period. The alternative, once again, is this January exception, in which our most powerful officials can commit the most terrible abuses and then resign to leave office and suddenly claim that they're just a private citizen who can't be held accountable at all. In the same vein, President Trump and his lawyers argue that he shouldn't be impeached because it will set a bad precedent for impeaching others. But that slippery slope argument is also incorrect. For centuries, the prevailing view has been that former officials are subject to impeachment, and you just heard a full discussion of that. The House has repeatedly acknowledged that fact. But in the vast majority of cases, the House has rightly recognized that an official's resignation or departure makes the extraordinary step of impeachment unnecessary and maybe even unwise. As a House manager rightly explained in the Belknap case, and I quote, "There is no likelihood that we shall ever unlimber the clumsy and bulky monster piece of ordnance to take aim at an object from which all danger has gone by," end quote. President Trump's case, though, is different. The danger has not gone by. His threat to democracy makes any prior abuse by any government official pale in comparison. Moreover, allowing his conduct to pass without the most decisive response would itself create an extraordinary danger to the nation. Inviting further abuse of power and signaling that the Congress of the United States is unable or unwilling to respond to insurrection incited by the president. Think about that. To paraphrase Justice Robert Jackson, who said that that precedent that I just described would lie about like a loaded weapon ready for the hand of any future president who decided in his final months to make a play for unlimited power. Think of the danger. Here is the rare case in which love of the Constitution and commitment to our democracy required the House to impeach. It's for the same reason the Senate can and must try this case. Next, President Trump will assert that it somehow is significant or it matters that the Chief Justice isn't presiding over this trial. Let me state this very plainly. It does not matter. It is not significant. Under Article 1, Section 3, when the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. There is only one person who is President of the United States at a time. Right now, Joseph R. Biden, Jr. is the 46th President of the United States. As a result, the requirement that the Chief Justice preside isn't triggered. Instead, the normal rules of any impeachment of anyone other than the sitting president apply. And under those rules, the President pro tem, Senator Leahy, can preside. And of course, this makes perfect sense. The Chief Justice presides because when the current president is on trial, if Chief Justice doesn't preside, the Vice President could preside. And it would be a conflict for someone to preside over a trial that would become president if there was a conviction. There isn't that concern when you have a former president on trial, or for that matter, when you have anyone on trial other than the current president, which is why the Chief Justice presides only in that single case, and why this is exactly the presiding officer the Constitution and the Senate rules require. As a fallback, President Trump and his lawyers may argue today that he should get a free pass on inciting an armed insurrection against the United States government and endangering Congress because, as he would put it, this impeachment is somehow unconstitutional. So far as I understand it from reading the pleadings in this case, this defense involves cobbling together a bunch of meritless legal arguments, all of them attempting to focus on substance rather than jurisdiction, and insisting that these kitchen sink objections lead the Senate to not try the case. Since they may raise these points at this juncture, I feel obliged really to address them. He may argue, for example, that he didn't receive enough process in the House, even though the House proceedings are more like a grand jury action, which is followed later by trial in the Senate with a full presentation of evidence. Even though the evidence of his high crimes and misdemeanors is overwhelming and supported by a huge public record. Even though we're going to put that evidence before you at this trial, and even though have a full and fair opportunity to respond to it before all of you. Even though hundreds of others involved in the events of January 6th have already been charged for their role in attacks that the president incited. And even though we invited him to voluntarily come here and testify and tell his story. A request, as you know, that his lawyers immediately refused, presumably because they understood what would happen if he were to testify under oath. Regardless, President Trump's process arguments are not only wrong on their own terms, but they're also completely irrelevant to the question of whether you should hold this trial. That question is answered by the Constitution, and the answer is yes. In addition, separate from his due process complaints, President Trump and his counsel, particularly his counsel, have boasted on TV that to counter the undisputed evidence of what actually happened in this case, you'll see video clips. They'll show video clips of other politicians, including Democratic politicians, using what they consider incendiary language. Apparently, they think this will establish some sort of equivalency, or that it will show in contrast that President Trump's statements at the Save America rally weren't so bad. Like so much of what President Trump's lawyers might say today, that's a gimmick. It's a parlor game meant to inflame partisan hostility and play on our divisions. So let me be crystal clear. President Trump was not impeached because the words he used, viewed in isolation, without context, were beyond the pale. Plenty of other politicians have used strong language. But Donald J. Trump was president of the United States. He sought to overturn a presidential election that had been upheld by every single court to consider it. He spent months insisting to his base that the only way he could lose was a dangerous, wide-ranging conspiracy against them and America itself. He relentlessly attempted to persuade his followers that the peaceful transfer of power that was taking place in the Capitol was an abomination that had to be stopped at all costs. He flirted with groups like the Proud Boys, telling them to stand back and stand by, while endorsing violence and sparking death threats to his opponents. He summoned an armed, angry, and dangerous crowd that wanted to keep him in power and was widely reported to be poised on a hair trigger for violence at his direction. He then made his heated statements in circumstances where it was clear, where it was foreseeable that those statements would spark extraordinary, imminent violence. He then failed to defend the Capitol, the Congress, and the Vice President during the insurrection, engaging in extraordinary dereliction of duty and desertion of duty that was only possible because of the high office he held. He issued statements during the insurrection, targeting the vice president and reiterating the very same lies about the election that had launched the violence in the first place. And he issued a tweet 5 hours after the Capitol was sacked, in which he sided with the bad guys. We all know that context matters, that office and meaning and intent and consequences matter. Simply put, it matters when and where and how we speak. The oaths we've sworn and the power we hold matter. President Trump was not impeached because he used words that the House decided are forbidden or unpopular. He was impeached for inciting armed violence against the government of the United States of America. This leads me to a few final thoughts about why it's so important for you to hear this case as authorized and as indeed required by our history and by the Constitution. President Trump's lawyers will say, I expect, that you should dismiss this case so that the country can move on. They'll assert that this impeachment is partisan and that the spirit of bipartisanship and bipartisan cooperation requires us to drop the case and march forward in unity. With all due respect, every premise and every conclusion of that argument is wrong. Just weeks ago, the President of the United States literally incited an armed attack on the Capitol, our seat of government, while seeking to retain power by subverting an election he lost and then celebrated the attack. People died. People were brutally injured. President Trump's actions endangered every single member of Congress, his own vice president, thousands of congressional staffers, and our own Capitol Police and other law enforcement. This was a national tragedy, a disaster for America's standing in the world. And President Trump is singularly responsible for inciting it. As we will prove, the attack on the Capitol was not solely the work of extremists lurking in the shadows. Indeed, does anyone in this chamber honestly believe that but for the conduct of President Trump, that a charge in the article of impeachment, that attack at the Capitol would have occurred? Does anybody believe that? And now his lawyers will come before you and insist, even as the Capitol is still surrounded with barbed wires and fences and soldiers, that we should just move on, let bygones be bygones, and allow President Trump to walk away without any accountability, any reckoning, any consequences. That cannot be right. That is not unity. That's the path to fear of what future presidents could do. So there's a good reason why this article of impeachment passed the House with bipartisan support. The principles at stake belong to all Americans from all walks of life. We have a common interest in making clear that there are lines nobody can cross, especially the President of the United States. And so we share an interest in this trial where the truth can be shown and where President Trump can be called to account for his offenses. William Faulkner famously wrote that the past is never dead. But this isn't even the past. This just happened. It's still happening. Look around you as you come to the Capitol and come to work. I really do not believe that our attention span is so short, that our sense of duty so frail, our factional loyalty so all-consuming, that the president can provoke an attack on Congress itself and get away with it just because it occurred near the end of his term. After a betrayal like this, there cannot be unity without accountability. And this is exactly what the Constitution calls for. The framers' original understanding, this chamber's own precedent, and the very words used in the Constitution all confirm unquestionably, indisputably, that President Trump must stand trial for his high crimes and misdemeanors against the American people. We cannot continue down the path of partisanship and division that has turned the Capitol into an armed fortress. Senators, it now falls to you to bring our country together by holding this trial, and once all the evidence is before you, by delivering justice. Thank you.
Senators, Mr. President, to close, I want to say something personal about the stakes of this decision, whether President Trump can stand trial and be held to account for inciting insurrection against us. This trial is personal indeed for every senator, for every member of the House, every manager, all of our staff, the Capitol Police, the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police, the National Guard, maintenance and custodial crews, the print journalists and TV people who were here, and all of our families and friends. And I hope this trial reminds America how personal democracy is, and how personal is the loss of democracy, too. Distinguished members of the Senate, my youngest daughter, Tabitha, was there with me on Wednesday, January 6th. It was the day after we buried her brother, our son Tommy, the saddest day of our lives. Also, there was my son-in-law, Hank, who's married to our oldest daughter, Hannah, and I consider him a son too, even though he eloped with my daughter and didn't tell us what they were going to do. But it was in the middle of COVID-19. But the reason they came with me that Wednesday, January 6th, was because they wanted to be together with me in the middle of a devastating week for our family. And I told them I had to go back to work because we were counting electoral votes that day on January 6th. It was our constitutional duty. And I invited them instead to come with me to witness this historic event, the peaceful transfer of power in America. And they said they heard that President Trump was calling on his followers to come to Washington to protest, and they asked me directly, would it be safe? Would it be safe? And I told them, of course it should be safe. This is the Capitol. Steny Hoyer, our majority leader, had kindly offered me the use of his office on the House floor because I was one of the managers that day and we were going through our grief. So Tabitha and Hank were with me in Steny's office as colleagues dropped by to console us about the loss of our middle child, Tommy, our beloved Tommy. Mr. Neguse and Mr. Cicilline actually came to see me that day. Dozens of members, lots of Republicans, lots of Democrats came to see me. And I felt a sense of being lifted up from the agony. And I won't forget their tenderness. And through the tears, I was working on a speech for the floor when we would all be together in joint session. And I wanted to focus on unity when we met in the House. I quoted Abraham Lincoln's famous 1838 Lyceum speech, where he said that if division and destruction ever come to America, it won't come from abroad. It'll come from within, said Lincoln. And in that same speech, Lincoln passionately deplored mob violence. This was right after the murder of Elijah Lovejoy, the abolitionist newspaper editor. And Lincoln deplored mob violence, and he deplored mob rule, and he said it would lead to tyranny and despotism in America. That was the speech I gave that day after the House very graciously and warmly welcomed me back. And Tabitha and Hank came with me to the floor, and they watched it from the gallery. And when it was over, they went back to that office, Steny's office, off of the House floor. They didn't know that the House had been breached yet, and that an insurrection, a riot, or a coup had come to Congress. And by the time we learned about it, about what was going on, it was too late. I couldn't get out there to be with them in that office. And all around me, people were calling their wives and their husbands, their loved ones, to say goodbye. Members of Congress In the House, anyway, were removing their congressional pins so they wouldn't be identified by the mob as they tried to escape the violence. Our new chaplain got up and said a prayer for us, and we were told to put our gas masks on. And then there was a sound I will never forget, the sound of pounding on the door like a battering ram. The most haunting sound I ever heard, and I will never forget it. My chief of staff, Julie Tagan, was with Tabitha and Hank locked and barricaded in that office. The kids hiding under the desk, placing what they thought were their final texts and whispered phone calls to say their goodbyes. They thought they were going to die. My son-in-law had never even been to the Capitol before. And when they were finally rescued, over an hour later by Capitol officers, and we were together, I hugged them and I apologized, and I told my daughter Tabitha, who's 24 and a brilliant algebra teacher in Teach for America. Now, I told her how sorry I was, and I promised her that it would not be like this again the next time she came back to the Capitol with me. And you know what she said? She said, "Dad, I don't want to come back to the Capitol." Of all terrible, brutal things I saw and I heard on that day, and since then, that one hit me the hardest. That and watching someone use an American flagpole, with the flag still on it, to spear and pummel one of our police officers ruthlessly, mercilessly, tortured by a pole with a flag on it that he was defending with his very life. People died that day. Officers ended up with head damage and brain damage. People's eyes were gouged. An officer had a heart attack. An officer lost 3 fingers that day. 2 officers have taken their own lives. Senators, this cannot be our future. This cannot be the future of America. We cannot have presidents inciting and mobilizing mob violence against our government and our institutions because they refuse to accept the will of the people under the Constitution of the United States. Much less can we create a new January exception in our precious, beloved Constitution that prior generations have died for and fought for. Presidents have
Are you crying?
to get away with whatever they wanted to.
Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
We close, Mr. President, and reserve your time.
I ask unanimous consent. I ask unanimous consent. There now be a 10-minute break. I ask unanimous consent the Senate recess for 10 minutes.
Without objection, so ordered.
And so the House impeachment managers have essentially temporarily ended their case. They've reserved the right to come back with the balance of their time in rebuttal. We saw largely a straightforward constitutional argument, but that last 10 minutes or so, a very emotional first-person account from.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give you the real deal. I'm gonna give y'all the real of what's really going on. Hold on. All right. I'm gonna break it down for you, real, black style. Okay, this is what I heard. We know Trump and his goons are full of shit, but the Republicans are full of shit. Was he sitting there crying? Are you fucking serious? Dude, you do it too much. This was actually sitting there crying. Are you serious? Come on, man. Non-melanated folks ain't got no problem with dropping some fake ass tears to make it seem like, what I mean, they're so destroyed. Oh my God. I almost died. In the immortal words of Bow-Legged Lou in the movie Who's the Man? Motherfucker, please. Motherfucker, please. Come on, man. Yo, this shit is comical, man. See, here on the Black CNN, this is the type of stuff that they won't. Well, I don't know. Chris Cuomo says some real outlandish stuff on CNN here lately. They figure Donald can do it. Why can't I? But there's the as you can see, they gave a historical precedent. Let's get serious for a minute. They gave a historical precedent of where, and they gave pretty adequate truth, and the Constitution is pretty cut and dry. And here's something that I wish that they would bring up, but I'm going to bring it up. Here's a point that I'm going to bring up. A very good point with this. Is it constitutional or not? If it were unconstitutional to impeach and convict a former president, let's look at it this way. If you could just do what Donald Trump thinks that he's going to convince, his team's going to try to convince people that he could do, if you could do that, just resign or walk away or be voted out or whatever and go on about your business. Nixon resigned. And as soon as he resigned, what did Gerald Ford do? He pardoned Nixon. Well, if that was the way it was, that you could just walk away and resign or whatever, then why did Nixon have to pardon him? There was no need for Nixon to pardon him. Now, if you could just walk away from it. So clearly, when the framers, and they keep saying the framers. So, what are the framers? The framers are the people who wrote the Constitution. So basically, what the framers were saying when they wrote the Constitution is that no person, you are responsible for your conduct as president from the minute you're sworn in until the minute that the next person is sworn in. From that time to that time, yes, you are bound by and governed by those laws that were created in the Constitution. That includes you, Donnie. But is it really going to do anything? Might say the president. See, what they need to do is they need to ban not just him from running. Because I was just talking to Joe Storm. He's going to be on later on. He had a good point. Donald don't give a fuck about running again. He don't care. He never wanted to win in the first place. It was a fluke and a tax write-off from him for the first place. And then when he got all the way to the final, he's like, well, fuck it. I'm here now. I might as well ride it out. He ain't no quitter. I give him that. He ain't no quitter. So, but does he really give a shit about running again? Fuck no. He don't care. No, they should ban his kids from running. Ivanka didn't already started. They should ban not only him, but his entire family. If your name is Trump, you can't run. If you had anything to do with the Trump organization that was in the White House, because that was not a cabinet, that was an organization, a regime. You know what I mean? A criminal family. Yeah. So that's my take. If they should ban him. They should ban Jared, Donald Jr., Ivanka. What's the former first whore's name? Whatever that whole name is. Melania, whatever. Yeah, ban her. I feel as though Future Barron should be banned. Anybody that was around during his see, I told you all this, and it come to pass. I was right. When I think they're back on. Yeah, I think they're back on. We'll get back at this later. Back to the impeachment trial of Donald John Trump. We're the only internet radio station that's doing that live like this that I know of. In this region. I can't speak for all, but yeah. Okay, let's get back to it. To my commentary, because we don't need their commentary because we're listening to the Grown Folks Radio. So we're going to listen to my commentary. So basically, the framers have pretty much outlined it. A few professors and people are pretty much all in agreement. The Republicans just don't want to basically say what everybody else has been saying. Dude, you messed up, and you messed up big. Bottom line. And we know that you're not going to. He's not going to go. Listen, I've been telling you all this for 4 years. I'm going to keep. Donald Trump will never see the inside of a jail cell. So, what is the point of this? In my opinion, if I were Chuck Schumer, and would I still do this knowing that he has no chance of being convicted whatsoever? Yeah, I would. Yeah, because you gotta let the next. We know that he's not going anywhere, but we gotta let the futures know that this kind of crap will not be tolerated. That there are consequences, and what he did. It's one thing to incite a riot. I mean, that's bad enough. That's treasonous enough. People died as a result of it. People were hurt, maimed. They did destruction to the Capitol, and you cannot compare that to Black Lives Matter at all. And I really wish they would stop doing that, or blaming it on the alleged. And I'm going to keep saying alleged because it has not been proven that it actually exists. Antifa. No. Not letting y'all get away with that one. Nope. He knew exactly what he was doing, and on this one, you don't even have to dig up any proof. The people that he incited are the ones that are the greatest witnesses, have been the best witnesses, because most of them been saying, Donald Trump invited me. I'm here because of Donald Trump. And he specifically said, and I quote, go down, fight, or you won't have a country to fight for. Go down there and I'll be right with you. That's saying, come on, I got your back. Don't worry about it. That's what it sounds like to me. So here we are. He wanted to be historical. Well, damn it, you're historical. You are the first president in history, in U.S. history, to be impeached twice. Let's look at that again. Out of 45 presidents over a span of 200 some odd years, only 3 presidents have been impeached. Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. But you just had to do it better than everybody else, didn't you, Donnie? You got impeached twice. Twice. And who predicted that would happen? Sure did. Remember that, y'all? When we were doing the Melanated Morning Show at night, I told y'all he was going to be impeached again. But that is because I really believed. Now, remember, I was also saying because at that time, Biden was really sucking ass bad. Well, this is even before the primary. At that time, I really, and this was before the pandemic that I even started predicting this. Now, I didn't predict a pandemic. I'm not that good. I'm not the Simpsons. But I truly believe, as strong as a hold as he had on his base and as much stuff he was getting with, I believed that he was going to be reelected. I really did. So being reelected, I knew that he was going to do something else even more egregious than the first time. And I truly believed, and I told y'all this, that I thought that he was going to be impeached twice. I told y'all he was going to be the first president in history to be impeached twice. God damn it, I was right. But I didn't think he was going to do it on his way out the door. God damn. And I got to be honest with you. And I still believe this to this day. Had he given out the stimulus check, had he signed that bill, I truly believe that he would have won re-election. Him not signing that bill and people, his base still being broke, they was like, oh, fuck this. Now, they might not have told their friends and their family what they was going to do, but they snuck and said, oh, this dude done fucked me for the last time. By him, that was, the pandemic was the undoing of him, of Donald Trump, of his presidency. That pandemic, had there not been a pandemic, I truly believe he would have got reelected. Because he had these people blind. They're still blinded. Look at, some of them gave their lives for him. Their livelihoods. And these are serious charges these people are being charged with. Serious charges. Federal penitentiary charges. So yeah, this is serious. This is serious. But I truly believe that had the pandemic would not have been, and had he signed that bill, I think he still would have did it. Had he signed that bill in enough time, like he was supposed to, I truly believe he would have won re-election. If he had won re-election, I'm telling you, let's just say he would have won re-election and there would have been, but see, that's the thing. Had he won re-election, I believe that the Senate would still be in charge by the Republicans. By him losing the election and screwing up so bad and just doing so much goofy shit, that made a lot of people come out that normally wouldn't have come out in Georgia. And that made some people cross over. They'll never admit that they crossed over. There are some people crossed over because they were tired of what the Republican Party was doing. And they're still trying to do it. $600 billion for a relief pack? What the hell are you supposed to do with that? That ain't going to do nothing. Hell, we barely got by with the last one, the $900 billion. No. Thank God that everything is controlled and Biden is being the nice guy. Let's see if we can work bipartisan. Let's see. Dude, ain't going to happen. Just go into the reconciliation and pass the law and fuck them. Which is the same thing they did. That's the same exact thing that they did to y'all back in 2017 when they so-called lowered taxes, which really was a tax break for their homies. They didn't ask y'all permission. They just went ahead and did it. It's like, fuck y'all. But the Democrats are so much on that kumbaya. See, that's why I couldn't be. I'm like, man, Man, fuck them. They ain't give a fuck. If you don't care about me, I don't give a shit about you. That goes hand in hand. Like, are you serious? But hey. So they're on break right now. They're taking supposed to be a 10-minute break. I guess, to go TT and get some water and all that little good stuff. So as you can see, they're coming back in. So let's see what they have to say. They're coming back in into session. Grown Folks Radio. This is not the Melanated Mornings. This is just breaking news. The second historical impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. Donald John Trump. Happy Impeachment Day, y'all.
Does this telegraph the rest of the trial ahead to the extent that what these people believed, what they think they heard from the president, is critical to this notion of whether he was the one that fired them up and sent them into action?
That's a very, very important point you bring up. And I was thinking the exact same thing as I was watching that video, because the general public did not hear that much audio in the news reports following the breach of the Capitol. And even though Trump's team may say,
listen, it don't take a brain surgeon to figure that out. Like I said, we heard what they said. We heard what was said. We heard what he said. You heard what Don Jr. said. You heard what Ivanka had to say. They were laughing and snickering in the whole 9 yards. So it don't take a brain surgeon to figure this one out. I keep thinking that they're getting ready to go back into session, but I could swear Schumer said 10 minutes. It's been damn near 15 minutes now. But stand by, because this is definitely going to take all day long. So, yeah, they're at they took a 10-minute recess. They took a 10-minute recess, so I guess we're waiting for them to maul around and do goofy shit. And get something to eat and take a whiz and all that good stuff. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we're watching right now. As you can see, the news that's covering is giving their point of view. But since we are the black CNN, we really don't need them to tell you, because I can tell you, I've been pretty much keep you guys abreast of what's going on. Most people that I talk to about the Melanated Morning Show say that it's very informative. Just don't play it around kids. I keep saying I'm going to clean it up, but I ain't going to clean it. Shit. Just do what I do best. Be me and be real. That's the one thing about Trump that I do admire. At least he a liar, but he doing what the fuck he wanted to do. He really is doing a Sinatra. I did it my way. He really doing it his way. Hey, you gotta respect him on that one. He's still a clown, but you gotta respect him. You gotta respect him on that one. Hey, he's definitely historical. I will say that. I think they're back in session. Let's see if they're back. It looks like they might be back in session. If they're not in session, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Let's see if they're in session. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, it looks like they're back in session. The impeachment trial, second one of Donald J. Trump.